Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite dark sorcerer here. And this morning, I'd like to discuss a couple of things from the occult community perspective of study. Lately, in a lot of grimoires, in a lot of Facebook groups and stuff like that, you're seeing a lot of things on Lilith. Okay. You're seeing a lot of things on the Spider Queen mythology, okay? And then on the other hand, you are seeing a lot of people discussing the different realms of dead or the different levels of the dead. So I thought I'd take up to a little bit and just kind of just discuss this a little bit in my own understanding of it, okay? And from what I've researched personally on these two topics. So first, let's take a look at the mythology of Lilith. Okay? Lilith, according to demonology and biblical accounts, was a demon. She's been associated with vampiric spirits. She has been associated with the Spider Queen. She has even been associated with both Satan and Samael as a concubine, the mother of all demonic, much in the same way as Tiamat from the Necronomicon. She has even been the first wife of Adam. Okay, defining that of Jewish texts like the Jewish Haggadah. Okay, Jewish demonology surrounding both the Red Sea region going into Akkadian, Babylonian, Sumerian, even Syriac traditions, depending upon her terminology. Okay. Now, what I found interesting about this is that somewhere along the line, she's been associated with the spider goddess. Now, I did some research a while ago into this mythos. Now, the two sources that I came across, the most sources that I came across was built around two aspects. The first, the Greek, Aradia, the spider goddess who was a weaver. Okay, apparently her reputation got around because Athena, the goddess, heard about this and she put it to a test, went up against her herself. Now, there's two mythos behind this, okay, that story wise. The first story is that she lost to Aradia, and out of vengeance and sheer spite, turned her into the first spider, and she became known as the Spider Queen. Okay. Now, the second aspect was that she promoted her, kind of just created her, I guess you could say, in the Spider Queen image because of the fact that she thought she was better than Athena. Okay. Now, those are the two stories surrounding the Spider Queen, but nothing, especially in Greek. In Native American lore, however, the Spider Queen or the Spider Mother is said to be the first creator of humans. Okay. Now, I delved into this aspect because of the fact that I happen to be Native American on my dad's side. And so I wanted to delve further into that world and delve further into my heritage. the family lineage aspects of this, because to see how it relates to Native American mythology, it was kind of cool, you know. So I delved into it, and everything keeps pointing to the mother, the first creator of the first humans in myth. Okay, so those are the stories about the Spider Queen and being the mother aspect. Now, as for Lilith herself, because she is associated with vampiric spirits, obviously she's going to be associated with the pop culture of vampirism. Okay. And yes, Father Sebastian does mention her as such once or twice, but he does not revolve his practice in Gothcraft around that aspect. Okay. Michael W. Ford even mentions Lilith. Okay. He doesn't refer to her as the Spider Queen or the Spider Mother, more like the Jewish and Arabic translations of Lilith being the mother, the first succubus, incubi type thing, the vampiric spirit that sucks the energy from you, which does go along with her mythology of hating men, seducing men. Okay, that's the succubus aspect. The vampiric aspects of her mythology go after children, the firstborns normally. That's the mythology behind her. Okay. Now, in demonology and angelology, there are a couple aspects that talk to her about being an angel or some kind of spirit of fire that was the first feminine archetype, where she didn't want to lay underneath a man, but instead wanted to be seen as equal. And we know how the biblical aspects of this goes. Well, three angels were sent after, and because she wouldn't return, they said that 1,000 of her children would die daily until she returned to her husband, Adam. Okay. And then their God created Eve from him. So they're both human, both mortal. And then you got a more recent grimoire called Lilith, the goddess of the Sitra Ara. Now, the Sitra Ara, okay, deals with Lilith as being a dark goddess, a demon, a queen of the underworld, queen of harlots, vampire, mother of demons, and the guide for the initiates. Okay, she's associated with the spider mother, the red serpent, and such. Even the Witch of the Night. Okay, this book is filled with the archetype of the first, being ranged from Naama, Kali, and everything in between that deals with Lilith, the archetype of the motherhood. Even the mythos of the night hag. But here is the only book that associates her with being the Spider Queen, from what I can see. Okay? Michael W. Ford associates her with being associated with Lucifer in the adversarial Bible. Okay? But in the book of the Witch Moon, if you go to page, it's one in the back underneath the glossary, to page 447, there's a nice little Hebrew definition of Lilith, the goddess of witchcraft, magic, and sorcery, Lilith was the first wife of Adam and refused to be submission and joined with the shadows and demonic spirits in the deserts. Lilith was also said to be the spiritual mother of Cain by her mate Samael. Okay. Shaitan, the dragon. Okay. Now, what's interesting to note is the old dragon, the of mine, is associated with Dagon. Okay, the serpent of the deep. Okay, this is the biblical lore of that. Now, dragons have always been associated with folklore and legends, and I've been doing a lot of research into that because of the Mazagera Cabal system that I've been associated with and studying heavily over the last year. But also, in speaking of the Mazagera, the profane seals, okay, speaks to the Lilin, okay, and the Lilin is associated with Lilith, the feminine archetypes, but is also associated with one of the towers that is associated with the spider mother. Okay. And this is actually what caught my attention the most is because of the fact that it seemed I was told when I first got into it that there's going to be some crossovers. There's going to be some things that connect to other things. And they weren't joking about that. There is. So a lot of things really do connect with old folklore mythologies, from dragons to Lilith to Aradia, even that of the weavers in Norse mythology, Greek mythology, even the seers, okay, the three sisters, the fates, even the furies. A lot of these really do intermingle with other traditions worldwide. So I did find this very interesting, and I wanted to put that out there on this. Just by my experience and what I've studied so far on this topic of the Spider Mother and Lilith alone. Um, some people in demonolatry see her as, like, say, for example, in the adversarial doctrines, the first, I think it's 6 or 7, deal with Lucifer, and then the rest deal with Lilith. That's out of the Adversarial Bible by Michael W. Ford. Now, what's interesting to note also is that I found that very interesting. Not a equal or a succubi, no, but one of the names that was mentioned underneath that. You go into the Red Book of Appen, you have Samael, Lilith, Astaroth, and Nibiros as the 4 cardinal kings or princes, rulers of the underworld. Every region of the world and a lot of different doctrines talk about this. But I have not found actual evidence or proof that she's associated with Aradia or that of the Native American spider goddess, or even that backs this up. So far, I have found no proof whatsoever from historical texts stating that she's associated with spiders. What it does promote is the fact that she was Adam's first wife. She was some form of being similar to that of, say, for an example, an angel, maybe a djinn, a genie, okay, who married Adam, left, and became associated with Samael and that of Satan. So she became the night hag, the mother of all demons, things that strike terror in the night. And this brings us to the second part, the shades. Okay. I've heard this term for years, but I never really got into the study of it. The because I've always associated the shadows with things like shadowmancy, associated with necromancy, but more so the different degrees or levels, like in Dante's Inferno, the 13 levels of hell. Okay, going to Buddhism, specifically that of Asia, and you see many hells. Okay, and this literally backs up everything surrounding the different levels of hell. The image of an onion, you peel one back and you get a much more deeper level into this. And I found that very interesting because of the fact that Dante's Inferno, which later became a play through Shakespeare, was something that was very unique. It was more of a history lesson dealing with the sins of mankind. He'd been wronged by the church. He was wronged by a cardinal. He was imprisoned, banished from his home country, his village. He was shunned by everybody, and he lost everything. And he was even incarcerated due to his own belief. And what was interesting to note is that when he wrote Dante's Inferno, it was to show the cardinal the error of his ways. With each level of sin, or each level of the underworld, to be worse than the last, with the devil being at the very bottom, encased in fire and ice, fire and brimstone. So when I started delving into this aspect, when I started delving into the different levels of hell, the nine choirs of heaven and hell, for an example, there are nine levels. They're associated with angelics, the nine orders, the nine choirs between the throne of God and this reality. And likewise, in mirror image from this reality to the devil in the underworld at the very, very bottom. And while I was studying the books put out by Summit Redwood, I found it very interesting that the description of the journey into the underworld in the different realms kind of reminded me a lot of Lovecraft. Okay, the Necronomicon, where each realm had a huge perspective of different lights, different species, different ideals, with somebody running that realm. Okay, even if you get further into the shades, and we take this concept of having different colors, different degrees of darkness surrounding these shades. Now I want to read something from Michael W. Ford's book because I found this to be the best depiction of the shades that is out there. So I thought I'd take a second and just read this to you because it was something that really defined it. Was it right here? Page 448. Shades, spirits of the dead, ghosts, and phantoms which walks in the astral plane. These spirits may represent, in some cases, the body of the sorcerer in the plane of the dead, a world separate in some areas from our own living perception. In evocation, the necromantical practice of shades are brought around and closer to the world of the living. Okay? Now you can go underneath Google and you can type in shadow people. What are shadow people? They are shades or some form of shade. Okay. Now, this was actually taking me into different levels of shades, different, how should I say this, degrees of how the church would declare or define evil and occultism and sorcery, how it's associated with different practices like shadowmancy, for an example. Shadowmancy is a side of shades. The Mesoteric Cabal system does mention shades, but more in things like oneomancy or shadowmancy, black magic, astral projection, you know, soul traveling, stuff like that, and how they're associated with going into the astral or spiritual planes, because there are different planes that are between us and these dark realms, these forbidden realms, which is spoken of in the Mazajira Cabal system. Now, keep in mind that they're not the only ones who have written something about this. Michael W. Ford has written about it. Many of different occult practitioners have even spoken on it. So this is really something that's kind of fascinating. Lovecraft speaks of the land of shadows. He speaks of different aspects of soul travel, just in their own his own degree. Go into former grimoires, and you're going to see the same exact aspects, just in different terminology, different thought forms of what the shadows are, what the underworld is, and how they were viewed even within the days of Dante. Okay. Second century, the church actually put a decree out that associated demons with sin. Okay. And these sins later became associated with Dante's Inferno. Two different generations, two different eras, two different centuries. Okay. 1500, about 1300 years separate. But getting into things like shamanism or necromancy deals with this stuff as well. Now, according to the studies, at least my studies in this area, the shaman in the old days, about 1,000 years ago, lived between two realms, that of the spiritual and that of the physical. The medicine man or woman in African traditions did the same. They were wise, they were consulted on just about everything, and they were held close and dear to that of the tribe and the king of that tribe. Shamans, on the other hand, were sought after for spiritual advice. You go back into what is now known as mediumship, and you're seeing the same thing. You go into Canaanite, specifically that of around the time of King Saul, where he sends out his people to find the most powerful seer in the land. Because at the time, he was in a 40-year war with the Turks. The Turks. He couldn't see how to win. He couldn't figure out why God had forsaken him. So he went he's to his men and he sent him out to find the most powerful seer. And he ended up in front of the witch of Endor. And she says, "Why are you trying to ensnare me?" Well, she performed a necromantic rite dealing with blood sorcery. And she reanimated a corpse, basically. She reanimated through chiromancy, chiromantic practices, and brought forth spirits. In a sense, this is a form of shades. Okay. So there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of viewpoints of what the shades are, but and how they are associated with devils and demons, the things of myths and legends. You consider it said that gorgons, like in Greek mythology, for an example, that of oh, what's her name there? You watch, I'm going to remember her name later, and it's going to piss me off because it's right here, but it doesn't want to come out. What's her name there? I can't think of her name. Son of a bitch. Hate that when that happens. But anyways, you know the one I'm talking about, the one that can look at you and turn you into stone. Okay. It was said all you see is a glimmer, and then when you look, you're stone, you're dead. Okay. Think of that as the same example of shades, because shadow people and the shades come and go in our reality, in our lives. When you go into your altar room and you're staring out into the darkness, you're staring into the candlelight, and all of a sudden you see the glimmer. That not considered to be a shade? Is that not considered to be the very embodiment of the shift of perception of what the shades are and how they go from the darkness into the light, the visible made physical? You look at how the spirits commune in our lives through ritual. When we perform a feat of magic, we open up those gates, those portals. Is that not shifting perception, allowing them to shift from their realm into ours? When we do evocations and we open ourselves up, do we not invite these shades to appear within us in a state of possession? Shamans live with one foot in the spirit realm, with one in the physical. Necromancers are the same way, which is why 1,000 years ago they were so closely resembled together as one and the same, sometimes mistaken for one or the other, when in reality these are two different practices. Shadowmancy is the same way, is the ability for astral projection and soul travel to appear within a state of shadows or shades. But that's been my research into this topic, these two topics, and seeing how they relate to one another in the old sense, not this new sense of being associated with spiders. I found no evidence. There is a curse, is said to there where a witch or a sorcerer could curse somebody using spiders, and it is a form of hexcraft, but associated with Lilith. Maybe that's her animal, perhaps. You know, we see images of animals associated with goddesses all the time. Cats with Bastet in Egyptian, said to be the guardians of the underworld. Go with the hellhounds or the black dog in Greek mythology, associated with Hecate. Okay, right there you have two different ideologies of animals. Okay, associated with goddesses. So maybe spiders are associated with Lilith, and she is considered to be the witch queen, a vampiric queen, a agent of death, the very embodiment of death, if you would think about it. She seduced men and eventually killed them. She was known, mythology wise, of going after little children, specifically those of the unborn variety. The Greek terminology of Cocodamon fits this perfectly. So your guess is as good as mine on how spiders and Lilith are together. The only two stories that I found was that from Native American and that of Greek, Aradia, and Athena. So do your own homework into it and see where it goes from there with you. See where it associates you with, what systems it takes you into region wise, practice wise, even, and see where it leads you to. Just follow the current. That's all you got to do. Just see where it takes you. You'll be better off for it, learning by yourself and for yourself. So, with that said, I hope this has been intellectual. I hope it's been educational. And you can always get in touch with me here on YouTube. Okay. I'll always reply. All right. Have a good one. And until next time.